All right, gang. So who I've got here is a friend of mine. Came to be a friend of mine. I met him the first time. These was it December? No, was last December the first time I met you? I don't think
December,
so.
October or December.
Of last year?
Yeah.
I felt like I met you before then. Feels like forever. It's kind of like a bad marriage, man. But anyways, I met Dave through. I went through ULW 5, which was in December of 2021. So our whole crew went through it, and that could not have been the first time. I think it was when I know what it was. It was when I was talking at another ULW was the first time I had talked to you.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So probably a year prior to that. But, a lot of folks already know that our whole crew went through it in December of 2021. And Dave is a big integral part of Nate's program, ULW. And what Dave does is a multitude of things. One, he's a speaker at all these events. He's got a really cool story that he's going to share with us today. But a big part of what he does is a firewalk. And so when you go through ULW, you'll do several things. And I don't want to give away all the trade secrets of what goes on at ULW, but I mean, people see it on social media, so they know that we're walking on glass. So Dave did ours in Utah in this past May. Couldn't do a firewalk because it was indoors at a hotel or a resort, but we walked on glass. But firewalk is a big part of what he does. So ironically, today I had a meeting at 9 o'clock, and we got some really cool things for the future for current clients and those that are not yet clients and potential partnerships and whatnot. But this guy who owns a fintech company was doing a presentation for us, and he was talking about Tony Robbins. And then Edmund holds up a book, Awaken the Giant Within. He's reading that book right now with Tony Robbins, and he's talking about how he's in London having to do a firewalk. And this was years ago. And I said, any chance you know Dave Albin? He's like, I think so. And I described you briefly. He's like, yeah, I think so. I was like, yeah. I was like, I'm talking to him today. And I was like, I did his firewalk. And I said, you did too. So it's a small world. He's up in Minnesota, somewhere in Minnesota. But yeah, so he doesn't know you like I do, but he's had interactions with you.
Yeah.
So I kind of let the cat out of the bag. Can you kind of tell us your story with Tony Robbins, and we can kind of take it from there?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me on too, Michael.
Yeah.
It's always an honor to come be part of your mission here, man. This is a powerful thing going on. You guys got going. How I got to Robbins was I had come out of I was grossly addicted to alcohol and drugs, and so one morning I woke up on June 8th of 1988, that was D-Day for me, right? It was either storm the beach or die, And so I ended up calling Alcoholics Anonymous. They came. AA saved my life, and during the recovery process, one night I was up late because I had insomnia, and there was Tony, selling his 30-day program. It was called Personal Power, and came on little white things called cassette tapes. That gives you an idea, right, of how long ago it was. And I bought it. He sent them to me. I went through the program and it worked. And then 7 years later, I had a buddy, actually, to back up, I loaned my program to a friend, and he called me 7 years later in 1995 and said, hey, man, Tony's coming to town. Let's go see this guy. And so I agreed, and he bought me the ticket, and I did pay him back. And basically what you did back then, it was you picked up the ticket at will call. And so we got there. TR takes the stage at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And the next thing I know, it's after midnight. And then Robbins has been preparing us all day, 10 hours to go do this firewalk. And, to be brutally honest, man, I was not going to do it. From the very beginning, when I found out there was a firewalk, I'm like, nope, not going to do that. That's insane. And when I got there, I was holding on to that limiting belief that, it was all fear-based, and I wasn't going to do it for all these reasons and this BS that was going in my head. And I got some encouragement from one of Tony's people. And the next thing I know, Michael, I walked across those coals. And so for me, it was an immediate rush. It was like, really? I just did that? and I didn't burn myself. And so I was, I'm kind of freaking out. I'm like, how did I do that? How do you walk on coals that are 1,000 degrees and not burn yourself? So I got all these questions and all this stuff's going through my head. And so when I went to bed that night, got up the next morning and I felt amazing. I went to the event and I saw something that I'd never, ever seen in my entire life. I was with 3,500 people at this event, at TR's event, and people were connecting unlike anything I'd ever seen in my life. They were laughing, they were crying, they were telling their stories, they were talking about the firewalk, they were hugging. I mean, they were communicating on a humanistic level, unlike anything I'd ever seen or ever witnessed or ever been around. And so now I'm thinking, well, what's going on? I mean, is this happening because of the firewalk? Did we drink the Kool-Aid? I mean, what the heck is going on? And so that I was so intrigued and so blown away by the experience that I ended up getting involved with Tony's companies. I started off as a volunteer in 1995. In 1996, I became a subcontractor. I had a military and a security background, so I ended up on the security team, helping take care of some of Tony's celebrities. And then I got on the fire team. So I was doing both. And next thing I know, they asked me to become the assistant captain. And then in 2003, Tony pulled me aside one day. We were in the Bahamas at Date with Destiny at the Atlantis Hotel. And he asked me to take over all his firewalks globally. And at first I said, well, Tony, I can't do it. And he said, you can't or you won't? And I said, well, I can't. And he said, really, why? And I said, because I homeschool my kids. And he said, oh, wow, I kind of missed that. I didn't realize that. And he immediately said, so if I pay to have your kids travel with us, would that make a difference? And I was like, yeah, of course it would. So the next thing I know, there we are. We're on the road with Robbins. And I'm taking my
family. How cool of an
family.
experience is that for the kids?
Oh gosh,
the memories that they must have.
Oh geez, from the very beginning. In fact, when I accepted the position and I called home, and my son was waiting for me. And the reason he was waiting for me is one of the girls that worked inside Tony's office knew my wife and called her and said, hey, you might get prepared. I think your husband's just gonna accept a job as the fire captain with Robin. So, he's probably going to be calling you. Well, she told my son. So when I called, my son answered and he's like, hey, Dad, what's going on? Kind of acting like he didn't know what was happening. And sure enough, he said, I told him, hey, you want to go on the road with Tony? And he's like, you think, Dad? And he said, where's our first event?
Yeah, that's my next question. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Davey's like, where's our next event? And I said, Sydney, Australia. Oh. So that's right. So they got broke into Sydney, Australia. And my daughter firewalked the first time she was 6, which I know you can relate to with your family. My son was 9. And so there I was, man, just on the road, and kids got to go to Hawaii. They were with us at 9/11 when we were over there doing the big firewalk for Life Mastery. They toured around the country with me here in Florida and New York and Los Angeles and Chicago and Denver and Dallas. They went everywhere. So being homeschooled, yeah, it was great because we just took the curriculum with us. Right. And my wife took care of it while I was doing my job. And again, Tony he treated my kids like gold. He loved them. His wife now, Sage, she loved them. And so, yeah, it was a spectacular experience for my kids.
Yeah, not only a great opportunity for you, but probably far more rewarding that your kids were involved in it too.
Yeah, absolutely. No question about it. They definitely.
Yeah. And when it comes to firewalking, I will say, out of all the things that you do, I'm just being honest, the firewalking gives me the most anxiety. Yeah. The glass, cool. I'm not going to dance on it or anything, but I will walk across it. It doesn't bother me at all. The arrow breaks, the board breaks, stuff like that. No anxiety. The firewalking, still, just a little hesitation there. Yeah. I don't know. It feels like a different animal. Once you start walking on glass, you kind of get it. You're like, all right, yeah, I see how I'm not going to cut myself if I just listen to what Dave tells me to do. But with the firewalking, it's like, your mind's just looking at it. And what does the coals get up to? 2,000 degrees?
About 1,000. Yeah.
1,000.
Depends on, okay. Yeah. My job is to, work those coals and bring the temperature down. If you'll remember, when I lay them out I hit him with the shovel and I pound
Mm-hmm.
him into the grass, and every time I hit him with the shovel, it will cool them down. But still, 1,000 degrees is 1,000 degrees. They will burn you. I mean, absolutely. So, it's really that place. I think some people, they'll get a hot spot. I've never had it in all the years I've been doing this, and I've walked thousands and thousands of people. No one's ever been hurt.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? No one was ever hospitalized. No one, we've never been sued or anything like that. Can you get a hot spot? You better believe you can.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's typically gone the next day. Little tiny blister. It's kind of like somebody was talking the other day. It's kind of like cooking bacon. A little
Mm-hmm.
piece of bacon grease will pop and land on you to give you a little burn, right? And he goes, and do you care? No. Are you going to stop eating bacon? No. Right. So yeah, it can happen. I mean, I've gotten little hot spots, or I like to call them kisses.
Mm-hmm.
The fire will kiss you. But it's kind of like, and I know you've heard me do the training. It's like, look, the fire wants your attention. In that moment, it wants your attention. It wants you to focus. It wants you to believe. It wants you to, trust the process, and across you go. A lot of times, I've done events, and the person in charge, like the CEO or whatever who's there, or the business owner, they're so focused on everything around them, they're not giving the fire the 100% focus that it wants. And sure enough, they'll start walking across just like it's no big deal. And the next thing you know, they're hop, skipping, and jumping across those coals, right? So it's just kind of a, it's not that when somebody walks, they're not all in. They are, but they're not 100% focused on that moment with the fire, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think, because I had a small blister, and that's something that even bothered me that night. Just in the moment, I was like, "Whoa, okay, this is real fire here."
I remember that moment. Yeah, I do.
Yeah. That's actually not what I said. I didn't say, "Whoa."
Yeah, right. Yeah, it was a different language pattern, if I remember right.
Yeah, and my kids were around too, and even my wife. So, anyways, it was small, and it wasn't even something that bothered me like 5 minutes later. But one of the mistakes I made was getting too cocky, and probably, like you said, just not having enough respect for it, where I'm walking across it. I'm like, all right, this is not doing anything. I start getting a little cocky, walking a little slower, trying to show off. And you walk slow. Like you said, if you take that first step, you will take 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Yes, sir, you will.
Yeah.
And I got to share a moment with you that was really special. And that was the look on your face and your wife's face when the kids walked.
Mm-hmm.
That to me is, that I live for that moment, Michael. I just, the kids don't have those limiting beliefs, right?
Mm-hmm.
They don't have that ego going on. They're just like, okay, we're firewalking, boom, they go across, and away they go. And yeah, and again, to see that look on your face, the emotional look on your face was pretty spectacular, my friend.
Yeah, not just that. I mean, the board breaking too, because Rowan was 5 at the time.
Yeah, that's right.
And he's 6 now, but he just turned 6, but he was 5 at the time. And, the older boys, don't get me wrong, prideful with that. But when it came to the board breaking, it was pretty easy for them to break the board. But when it came down to the 5-year-old to break the board, I wanted that win for him. So, I'm really holding that board, and I'm trying to break it with my hands. But, I wanted him to break that board, and he did.
Yes, he did.
There's nothing more rewarding than seeing your kids succeed or overcome something. And yeah, I mean, and it wasn't just that. I mean, again, just several months later in May, now they're getting to walk on glass, and it's like now they get in the back of the line again. Like, can I go again?
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was really cool. And and what's so cool is there was such a bond with the with the boys. I get there and it's like, oh wow, it's Dave. And they, they're very, and that's another thing. What a benefit. Because there's an emotional bond, that connection, that congruency of that connection between me and everybody that comes to the event. So it was really, really, really cool, man.
Yeah. And, up until, what was it, 2-3 days ago. So Sawyer just turned 9, and all 3 of them, they share a room, and they have a dresser that they had their firewall coals sit on.
Yeah.
And then Sawyer just had a birthday that he shares with Asher, the youngest one. But anyways, he got a bunch of fighter jets. So finally his coal made it to the closet. now you've been trumped by the fighter jets.
Okay. Well,
now that Top Gun has come out, all he wants, actually today he wore a fighter suit, like for a fighter pilot. He wore a suit
Yeah.
and it's got rooster on it. He's got his little mini sunglasses and a fake mustache, and he wore that to school today. So he's really into Top Gun so much that he took his Coles, and his other two brothers, their Coles are still on their dressers. So
Isn't that cool? Yeah. Well,
it is cool.
if I'm going to take a back seat to anybody, it could be Tom Cruise, I guess.
Yeah,
why not?
well, it wasn't even Tom Cruise. It's Rooster.
Oh, it's Rooster. Yeah. Well, you know what? Embarrassingly enough, I haven't even seen the new version of it yet. So
Rooster is the son of Goose.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, you've got to see it.
I will. Oh, yeah.
I've seen it probably 10 times because I started sleep training Asher, and the way Mallory lays him down is she'll just lay in there quietly. Well, I can't sit still. Like right now, I'm standing up. I can't even sit down at a desk. I have to stand up.
Right.
So when I put him to sleep, we watch Top Gun.
Oh, nice. I love it.
And he eventually just tires out. He's not whining or crying. He just tires out and he falls asleep. Cool. So I've seen Top Gun a lot.
All these therapies out there on how to get your kids to sleep, and who would have thunk that, just
Top Gun.
lay them and watch Top Gun. I love it.
Yeah.
That's great.
So can you talk a little bit more about what you do at the ULW events as well? When it comes to the, well, actually, before you do that, you've got a really cool story of how you came to know banks and the banking system and credit cards and legal system that would obviously resonate really well with our audience. Can you tell that story if you don't mind?
Yeah, sure. Well, very similar to you, Michael. I got my ass handed to me in the mortgage crisis, right? I was out one day and I came home and I made a sale, and my wife's sitting on the couch and she's crying, and I walk in and I'm like, "What's going on?" She goes, "I think we're out of business." I go, "What are you talking about?" She goes, "Well, we just got this email. Our banking and our funding went away. They're not going to buy any more contracts from us." And I went, "What?" And so that was the day, right? And I ended up, even though I had some equity in my house, I had about 70 grand, I couldn't get to it, right? So I'm in a conventional mortgage, 30-year, like everyone else is, and I'm toast. There's nothing I can do about it. I'm going to have to try to figure this out. And so it was rough. We ended up losing everything. I lost my house, lost the farm, went through a divorce, 23-and-a-half-year marriage, had a heart attack the day after Michael Jackson died. And so, there I was. And now I'm a product of my own ignorance, right? I didn't know that if something happened, even though I had equity sitting over here, that I couldn't get to it. I think a lot of people that they just don't realize until it's too late. And so that kind of led me into having to defend myself in court. I went to bankruptcy court. I went to foreclosure court. I started getting sued by debt collectors for my credit cards. I mean, I'm in court. I'm doing everything pro se, right? I'm not hiring any attorneys. I'm doing it all myself. And long story short, on the credit card stuff, I met a guy that showed me how to go into court and defend myself. And I did what this man taught me to do, and I won 5 cases. And I'm not proud of that, but you've got to do what you've got to do in that circumstances. Millions of people lost their homes. What's interesting about me is that I found my note on Wall Street, right? So I was with Washington Mutual. Well, Washington Mutual was the largest bank failure in American history. And that's not even counting the subsidiary of Countrywide, which was, talk about pathetic. I mean, just really bad. I'm not going to go into it here, but let's just say my word for that is absolutely pathetic. So Washington Mutual had sold my note to Wall Street. So they were no longer the holder in due course. They didn't have the note. So how can they foreclose against me? Well, they did it to everyone. Well, I found my note on Wall Street. And so I had it, and I had proof of it. So they decided that they didn't really want to go into court. They didn't want to deal with that. And so let's just say we had a little settlement on that. Was it worth it? No, absolutely not. I got lucky is really what happened. To actually find the CUSIP number and find your note on Wall Street was, a 1 in a 500 million or whatever. I have no idea what the number is. I just know that I found it. And did I get a couple of checks? Yeah. Can I talk about it? No. There's a gag order on that.
Right.
So, but the bottom line is that, they still wanted to foreclose. They still wanted to take the property, and we had to leave. And this was our my kids, where they grew up, it was our little farm nestled in the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia. So once I learned the whole credit thing, I got pretty good at it. As a matter of fact, I got hired by a company called Credit Secrets, and I started working for them and helping them. They had a book that showed you how to repair your credit, and I read it like 10 times, listened to the audio several times, and got really, really good at it. And because they had a Facebook page with several thousand people in there, I think when I first started, it was like 9,000 people. And when people would come in, they'd ask questions, and I'd say, well, that answer is on page 22. Well, what about this? Well, that's on page 72. And so I started helping people. And because I am in the personal development industry, I would try to help motivate and inspire and encourage them. Well, the owner's watching me, and he called me one day and said, hey, man, I'd like to hire you. And he did. And then what took another twist is he called me one day and said, hey, we're going to be doing a show with Larry King, and I'd like to put you on the show, and I'd like you to be interviewed. And he said, I can't make the decision. You have to talk to the producer, but I think you're probably a shoo-in. And sure enough, I talked with the producer, which interestingly enough had done work for Gunthy Ranker many years ago, which was the company that promoted Tony when he started selling his personal power and his books on his infomercials. So yeah, right. So I was a shoo-in. So the next thing I know, I'm on the Larry King show. And then after that, when COVID hit, right, I had about $130,000 on our books, and it all went away, right? Because all my gigs are in person. So obviously I was shut down. So I ended up, and I think I showed you guys when I was there, I wrote a book called Winning the Credit Game, which is, on Amazon.
Yeah, because, COVID, especially, germs like on the bottom of your feet and all that. I mean, it can survive 1,000-degree colds and whatnot. So
yes, sir. Yeah, it can.
It makes logical sense why,
right.
Those types of events would.
Something that was really, really cool during your event. So I'm telling that story to you guys, and I don't know who you guys are at this point. I don't know anything about you guys. I mean, I know you were, Replace Your University, but I didn't know the details of what that meant. And so I remember saying something about it. Who here could tell me what the word mortgage means? And here's 12 guys that scream out, death pledge. And I went, what? I had never, because normally, I mean, I've asked mortgage lenders and bankers and all kinds of people, do you know what that word means? And they're like, it's when you borrow money from a bank. No. What does it literally mean, right? And so then, of course, and for the listening audience here today, if you take the word mort for mortgage,
right,
from the word death, well, it's death pledge, but it comes from the word mortician, right?
Mortality.
Mortality. Yeah. So
gauge is French for a contract.
Yeah.
So
there you are. You gotta. I mean, I just find it so ironic that they're right in our face with that. And right, it's like, here you go, sign your 30-year death pledge. And then I learned from you guys, right, that the average American family refis 3 times. It's like, oh God, it's like, it's just so sad.
And not just that, it's on typical 3 to 5 years. So right now you don't have a lot of refis. So I still got a lot of buddies. I was 17 years in the mortgage business. Matt, who was just walking by, his brother, heavy hitter in the mortgage industry. Man, they are taking on water fast right now because there's very little incentive for folks with a mortgage to refinance right now.
Right.
Because 2-3 years ago, well, not 3, but 2 years ago, they got 2.65% mortgages. Why would they give that up for 6.5%, 7%? Right now, investment properties, actually Adam, which is Matt's brother, was telling us, he's like, I'll tell you what it is. He said it's 7 points under par to get a 7.5% interest rate on a rental property right now with Fannie or Freddie, which means you have to bring 7 points to the table. Or get lender rebate, which actually there isn't a lender rebate, get the seller to credit some or whatnot. Basically, you've got to bring a lot of money to the table in order to do that loan. They don't want it. They don't want it right now. So when it comes to financing rental properties, HELOCs is about the only place you can get them right now.
Right.
That or hard money loans, which, that's 11, 12%. So long story short, they're taking on water big time. And I'm in some of those groups still. Got one group that I'm a part of. It's 11,500 loan officers. Man, it's actually sad, and I'm kind of reliving some of the stuff that they are going through because I went through it in 2007. So
Yeah.
yes, it affected a lot of people in 2008, but in 2007 is when it affected me. Actually, December 17th, 2007. Reason why I remember the date is because that was my birthday. That's
Wow.
when they shut the doors and just said, subprime's gone. Good luck to y'all. No severance, nothing. I was even executive with the company. I didn't get nothing. Um, so I'm kind of reliving some of that in these Facebook groups, guys that are already talking about bankruptcy, foreclosure. Had a loan officer that I thought was calling just to debate. We get this a lot where we'll get a loan officer who got a call from their potential client say, hey, I was going to do what you're talking about, but I just talked to replace your mortgage people and this makes more sense. And so they book a call with us to try to get the insight or the scoop and try to pick it apart so they can go back to the potential client and resurrect that deal. That was partly why this guy was calling, but I think partly he, once he got to talking to me, because he had talked to an account executive first, and then the account executive said, hey, this would be a fun phone call for you. And I always forget to record these because, and I need to, our second most popular video on YouTube is me debating a loan officer.
Oh, I love that.
This one would have dominated that one. As soon as I got off the call, I walked in the office and I was like, I did not record it. So he had all kinds of objections. And obviously, one by one, I'm just knocking down those walls because I know what he's going to say. I was in that seat. In 2009, I was trying to disprove this because my mentor told me I was a dope dealer and I was selling financial crack to middle America. So along the way, what I did find out though is he couldn't qualify to be a client. So 3 years ago, he made 500,000. 2 years ago, he made a little less than 300. And I was like, okay, it's declining income substantially. What are you on pace this year? He's like, less than 100.
Ooh,
I was like, are you
ouch.
kidding me? Yeah, he works for a large lender called Loan Depot, which is a big refi lender. And, you make hay when rates are low, but when rates go up, they vanish. And he's on pace for less than 100 grand. And I said, buddy, underwriters no different than I do. They're going to base that 100 grand that you're on pace for this year, and that's it. You're not going to debt ratio. And he's like, you're right, I won't.
Wow.
But back to your original point is a lot of skeptics out there of what we do because it doesn't make people money. It's not going to make loan officers money. It doesn't make banks money. It definitely doesn't make mortgage lenders money. So they're going to fight it tooth and nail, and they got to put bread on the table. And I totally get it. Like I don't do mortgages anymore, but I still have friends that do mortgages.
Yeah.
And I don't discourage that because 70% of the people that come to us, they shouldn't be doing this. They don't qualify for this. So what should they be doing? Something that mandates that they pay down their debt, which a mortgage does. Now, granted, in the first 5 years, not so much. But to my original point, that's why we don't have the refis right now is there's not a whole lot of incentive and financial sense to refi off of 2.5 or 2.6 to another 6.5 to 7.5% mortgage rate.
Right.
And it's a bloodbath. A lot of talented people are looking for jobs right now. And that's unfortunately, you're not seeing that as headlines on the news, on the mass media.
Right.
Unemployment is, in my opinion, it's not going to skyrocket, but it is definitely going to go up.
Oh yeah, absolutely. No question. Yeah, no question about it. It is. And, and with all due respect to, you had that definitive moment, like, okay, and like Robbins would say, it's in our moments of decision that our destinies are shaped. And, I know you got to that one point and said, all right, you know what? I'm all in. We're going for this, boys and girls. And, and now look how you positioned yourself. Mm-hmm. And I get it because, when I came back from your event and I booked a call with Edmund, the discovery call, and I got on the call with him. And I mean, I felt like I really knew Edmund and I really trusted him. And yet when he gave me those numbers on that discovery call, I still went, it can't be. Mm-hmm. How can that be possible? I don't get it. And until you kind of take a step back and go, you look, dude, the calculator doesn't lie. You know, you may not believe it, but the calculator doesn't care that you don't get it.
Right.
So, you know, just hang in there, right? Suck it up, pal, and get yourself to a point where you realize you're looking at something that can not only change your life. And I think, you know, and when you asked me to come to Snowbird, Utah and talk to your group there, I remember thinking, oh my gosh, you know, what am I going to tell these people? You know, I don't want to say I was stressing. I just was taking on such a level of responsibility because I felt that I needed to stand and deliver at a really high level there. And I always do, but there was something that took me to just a little higher level there. And I remember thinking, man, this is generational.
Yeah.
Because once you learn this, whether you join your organization or not, that information you gave them is not going away.
Right.
Right. They're in it. You know, it's going to be, it's like Alcoholics Anonymous. Once you go to AA and you know there's a way out and you know there's help setting over there, when you go back and you start drinking again, there's nothing worse than a head full of AA and a belly full of whiskey. Well, it's the same thing here. There's nothing worse than being in a conventional mortgage and knowing you got a way, you know, out over here where you can get access to your equity and you can build wealth and you start to put yourself in a position of the wealthiest people in America. So,
Right.
you know, and it's like my kids, and I know you know this, I know you've heard it, but for the listening audience, man, listen, tell me, once you understand this, you think you're going to let your kids get in a conventional mortgage? That's a hard no.
Right.
Right? You're going to teach it to your kids. You're going to teach it to your grandkids, your whole family. So you'll be that generational person who raises up in the middle of the family and takes the family in a whole nother direction. So that to me was what kind of got in my head, and was part of, you know, my talk when you asked me to come to Snowbird.
One of the main reasons why I wanted to interview you, and I was so excited to have you talk to our audience, is I don't think I've even shared it with you, and it's obvious. I mean, I've never asked you this question. We've never had this discussion, but you're proving my point of what this next question is it's obvious you have a massive passion for what you do, and that passion hasn't subsided. And in all due respect, you're 20 years older than me. And I sometimes think to myself, well, in 20 years, am I still going to have the same kind of passion I do now? But you do. I mean, it's something that I have a feeling that even if you didn't do well financially doing what you do, you would still be doing some of it because it's something that really. So what is it that keeps you going in the morning and you have more energy than people half your age? So where does that come from?
I think it just, you know, a lot of it I think was instilled in me, you know, when I got to AA, because they saved my life, Michael. They handed me my life back. They said, here, dude, you don't ever have to feel as bad as you do this day right here. And I started helping others achieve sobriety, and I got addicted to that. You know, and in my 20 years, you know, well, a little shy of 20 years, 2 decades with Tony Robbins, one of the things that I learned from Tony was the art and science of achievement versus fulfillment. Because a lot of people will achieve, but fulfillment doesn't go with them at the same time, right? And so there was great fulfillment in helping others. And so I believe, I think I probably said it during my talk in Snowbird, was that, you know, if you help enough people get what they want, you'll always get what you want. And so that's always driven me. And to this day, and I've never said this to you before because it never came up, but this seems like a good time. My passion for my firewalking and everything that I do to change people's lives. And I work with a lot of kids. In fact, on Friday, I just got asked to come to my high school, my local high school. So I'm going to go in there. I'm going to do a board break for all the seniors. And then I'm going to talk to them about career and college and entrepreneurship and business ownership. And then after that, there's a breakout session, and I'm going to run a little class over here so that if you want to talk to me about entrepreneurship or business related stuff, come talk to me. If you want to go to college, you know, go talk to them. And so, you know, that just happened. Well, one of the biggest companies in the state of North Carolina, which is actually based in my little town here, or my little community, my county, they sponsored it. They bought all the boards for the kids. You know, it was, you know, $1,300. It wasn't that big of a deal.
Right.
But I just got off the phone with him today, And now they are really excited to be working with me. And they're like, could we do this again? Could we do this down in Nashville? What about Greenville? So they've got 7 offices around the state of North Carolina. And so, that's kind of it. But the point I want to make on that is that I'm finding the same kind of passion that I have with Firewalk Productions for Replace Your University.
Nice.
Never said that before, and never had the opportunity. I probably would have said something in December, because I'll be at ULW in Nashville. But I figured, you know what? Why not now? But why? It's back to your question. Well, because we have an opportunity with your organization to take somebody and change their life unlike anything they've ever done. Because once you get them into that HELOC, that's step one, right? And it's not easy. I mean, as you know, these people are resistant. They've been so programmed to do it the wrong way that you have to unprogram that. You have to they're thinking. But once you get them there and you get that HELOC, and all of a sudden now they went from being in a conventional loan, right, which they never looked at. I don't want to see it. Why would I want to even look at that thing? Why would I want to look at page 5 and see what my interest rate really is? Why would I want to know what the bank really did to me and my family? No, I'm not going to look at that. So it's, it's denial is what it is. And I like to say denial is not just a river in Egypt. Okay. Right. So take a look at it. Go look at it. Be honest with yourself. And once you look at what they did to you, there's a much better way over here, because if you're on that road, you're on the wrong road. I mean, that's just that simple. And so now you go from not watching it, right, not paying any attention to it at all, to all of a sudden you're watching it like a hawk, right? Because now you can go online with your HELOC and it starts to create ideas and concepts. And, well, what if we did this? What if we did that? What if we decided to start a small business? What if we decided to do an Airbnb? What if, whatever. So they start realizing that every dollar that they can take and put it into that HELOC, that dollar is now working for them. And you taught me that. Michael, you taught me that.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm honored. One of the coolest things about having a business like this is you get to do business with people you know, like, and trust. And it's really cool to be centered around like-minded people that even if we didn't have to work together, we would still hang out together. Right. And, kind of back to your point, one thing that I found that I am good at is I find weird things to motivate me. And you talked about how people have been programmed their entire lives to think mortgage, mortgage, mortgage. There is no alternatives to mortgage. It's either cash or mortgages, right? So I was one of those people programming Americans to consume mortgages. I was a mortgage lender. That's how I made a living. That's how I put food on the table. And not just food on the table. I bought Cadillacs and 4-wheelers and Escalades and Denali's and big houses and just stupid stuff. I mean, the 20-year-old self, if I could just go back and and I'm writing a section in a book that's basically a letter to your old self of, if you could do that, what would you say? Man, would I have a long talk with myself? I just wasn't a good steward of money. And now, I'll be transparent. I make substantially more money than I've ever made before, but I live less lavishly. This every day, 20-something, suits, ties, designer shoes, clean shaven. And quite frankly, I was just a fraud. So part of what motivates me to do this is I spent 17 years programming people to think opposite of what I'm telling them today.
Right.
And there's a lot of guilt that comes with that. So that guilt is part of what motivates me.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to tell you, I wear black too, and I'm going to keep wearing black until they come out with a darker color. Right. But here's an interesting a dynamic of all that. Einstein kind of did the same thing too. He wore the same suit or clothes every day. He didn't stand in his closet and go, "Hey, what am I going to wear today?" No, man, he didn't want to waste time with that. And you're absolutely right. And I loved your transparency there and the integrity that you showed to your audience that, you admit, I was a fraud. Look at my shoes. Look at look at my, Johnson Murphy's, man. Look, I mean, I
Yeah.
get all that. And the cool thing for me is that being in Robin's environment, around so many successful people at every level, Olympians, professional athletes, entertainers, musicians, all of those people, a lot of them were just miserable.
Mm-hmm.
And they had achieved at a very, very high level, but it goes back to what I talked about earlier, and that is they didn't feel fulfilled. They weren't serving at a high level. And again, it goes back, you help enough people get what they want, and
Right.
you'll always get what you want. And that's what you're doing. You're helping people get off a really bad road and now onto something that, again, will not only help them and their immediate family, but their grandkids and their great grandkids on all the way up. And to me, that's a sweet spot in life, brother.
Yeah, I think where the synergy is that we both, with what your services are with Firewalk, and obviously you're part of Replace Your Mortgage as well. But with me, is part of that fulfillment that we get is we get to see the light bulb where people get to hope again and they get to dream again.
Yeah.
That W-2 salary is just enough to make you forget about what your dreams are. And we both have a role to play where we're helping people wake up from those nightmares. And they're like, look, this doesn't have to be status quo. You don't have to go through life like this. There's more to this world than this. And I just did a training last week called the Lottery Ticket Mindset. And I haven't launched it yet, but at least I don't think so. Baker has it right now, trying to clean it up and make me look less sunburnt and pale on the camera and whatnot. But anyways, I'll talk about what it is. I buy lottery tickets often, and my mom laughs at that. My wife does too. She's like, "That's a stupid tax," and I totally get it from a monetary standpoint. It is a stupid tax. And typically people who buy lottery tickets are the ones at lower income brackets. So they're like, why do you buy lottery tickets? It's like, I don't buy lottery tickets, and I only buy it when it gets above 300 million. So right now I buy lottery tickets. And when it gets above 300 million, because about a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago, I settled on a number. And this, I'm kind of going down different paths here, but I don't covet money. I look at money in the financial game as a game. It's no different than when I played basketball. Can I be competitive in basketball? I want to be better than the next person? Absolutely. Does that mean I'm a bad Christian because I want to be more competitive and better than the next basketball player? Absolutely not. I look at this is a game. This is a financial game. And not only is it a financial game that I want to play and win at, but the more I win, the more I'm rewarded with resources that I get to do what with? Help other people. We've talked about this in other trainings. The more resources I have to look at who all I impact. So just today, I was on a Zoom call with a fintech company in the conference room, and my contractor, who just rehabilitated a barn, came in for a check. And it was his last check because he finally finished. Paid him $37,000 to renovate a barn. And I'm like, I could have just built a brand new barn, but it was an old barn. It's on a century farm. Like, cool. I just want to resurrect this barn. So I paid him $37,000. Well, guess who his crew is? He's got 5 sons. Oh, they all are impacted based on that $37,000 check. That's right. So, because I can afford that, I've impacted him. Church. Well, guess what? I can give more now. Well, if I can give more, now the churches have more of an ability to do mission trips. And so we don't think of, it's sad that you get it's usually the ones that are without, that are the ones that are jealous. And then they try to spin these Bible verses to make it look bad for the ones that do have the resources. It's the opposite. We can have more impact than those. Well, because we have been blessed with those resources, and therefore there's more responsibility with those resources. But back to the lottery ticket mindset is I settled on number 300 million. And I'm like, all right, if I can make 300 million, then it's not that I've arrived. I don't think I'll ever stop. I hope I have the same vitality and energy at your age that you do now. I feel like you've got more energy than I do, even at my age, but I'm taking supplements for that. But anyways, 300 million is kind of my number. So that's why I buy lottery tickets when it's at 300 million. Yeah. Do I think I'm going to win the lottery? Absolutely not. I think there's a better chance that I'll get struck by lightning twice in the same day than I will of winning the Powerball. But you know what I do when I buy it? It's a routine. Every time I buy a lottery ticket, do you know what I do? I start visioning, what does my impact look like with $300 million?
Yeah.
What am I doing? What are my kids doing? What is my church doing? What are my relatives doing? What are those that I know, love, and trust who are currently in need? What does their life look like if I have $300 million? A lot looks different. That's why I buy the lottery tickets. It puts me in a mindset that this is what life looks like. This is how I dream, and this is how I hope moving forward. And then that becomes my reality. That once, and I'll even do this, I get a lottery ticket, then I get on Redfin. I know realtors hate to hear Redfin, but I get on Redfin just because I think it's a better app than Realtor.com. Realtor.com is terrible. You guys got to work on that. But I get on Redfin and I look through real estate. If I had $300 million, would I have a lake house? Would I have a mountain house in North Carolina, in Boone, North Carolina? Would I have a beach house? All these different things, right? $300 million, that's a lot of resources. Now, again, I'm not just materialistic things, but what can I do? I could also pay somebody's house off every single year. I could create a charity with that. It becomes so ingrained. I go through a rhythm with this lottery ticket that now when the number's called and it undoubtedly will not win, I said, I can't have a life outside of that. But I have an opportunity. I've got a couple businesses that I can grow and scale and sell. So there's my lottery ticket.
Yeah.
Now
Absolutely.
life looks terrible without it, so I got to go get it. So that's what I call the lottery ticket mindset.
Wow.
And I think that's part of, firewalking is it's knocking down those walls and those limiting beliefs that we are capable of so much more if we just allowed ourselves the opportunity to go through the motions of doing the hard things.
Yeah. Two things about the lottery. One is, and I really appreciate the whole Christian idea behind that too, because a really dear friend of mine who passed away years ago was a pastor, and we had this conversation. And I said, so Edwin, let me ask you something. What does it say about widows and orphans in Scripture? And he says, well, we're responsible for taking care of them. And I said, exactly right. And what does it take to do that? It takes money.
Mm-hmm.
And so this idea that, Christians should be living in poverty or whatever doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. I don't think that's what is written in Scripture at all. I think it's just the opposite.
Right.
And so to play this scarcity card doesn't really resonate with me. It doesn't make any sense to me at all, not based on what I've read in the Bible. And I've read the Bible. And so that idea in my eyes is exactly what you just said. Yeah. How many widows can you save? How many orphans can you feed? That takes money.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, absolutely. That's a really powerful mindset when it comes to that. I love it. That's fantastic. And it's funny because I'll buy a lottery ticket once in a while. I'm like you, unless it gets over 100 million, I don't buy a ticket. I'm like, let those other people buy tickets and let it get it over 100 million.
Yeah.
Then I'll buy one. Right. And I even thought, I was thinking here recently, like, what would you do if you won that 300 million? And you're not going to believe this, but this is the God's truth. I thought, you know what? I'd go to Lush and I'd go, hey, maybe we could create our own bank. Maybe we could, what if we could, for some of the people that, because they have a 665 or, well, maybe not 665, but maybe they got a 650 credit score, or maybe they were turned down, I'd like, well, why couldn't we create our own HELOC?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And finance some people or take that money and use that to move your organization forward. Because again, my passion and love for what you're doing is off the chain. It's up there. I'm saying now it's probably pretty equal to what my passion has been for the last many, many years with my firewalking. So to be able to change people's lives, again, it's really what it comes back to. That's the model. That's for me. That's what I do. So why not? And here's the other thing, and I'll just tell you, I went on that one. It was a pretty hard run. I went Louisville, Nashville, Asheville, North Carolina. I went to Atlanta. I went to New York. I went from New York to Snowbird. I came back. I went to Boston. I went from Boston to Willingston, North Dakota with Nate, and we did the 2 firewalks up there. Came back, went to Philly, went to Hickory, North Carolina, and then Lenore, North Carolina. And I did it all by myself. My daughter used to travel with me quite a bit in the old days, and she would go with me and help and do all that. Well, she's living with her boyfriend now, and they're probably going to get married, and she's got a grandson, or my grandson, she's got a son, and they moved out. So I'm an empty nester. My point is I did all the work myself. And you know what? I was spent. I was tired. I was really, really, really
I
tired.
bet. That's a world tour right there.
Right. Yeah. And I'm 68 years old. It's like, come on, dude, be careful. You're not no spring chicken. You've got to be able to kind of take it back a little bit so that you can, you've got plenty of energy to do the other things. And I'm looking at your organization, and I'm looking at the opportunity there. I'm going, well, I'll tell you what, it's sure a lot easier to talk on the phone to somebody than it is to go out there and, do all the logistics and prepare the firewalk. And, the good news for me is that I am with Nate Bailey, and Nate and I, there's a magic synergy going on between us, and I love what he's doing and he loves what I do. And so I'm always going to have that, but I'd also like to get to the point with what just happened to me with the kids, right? Go to high schools. And that, and that might even be a consideration. Go in and talk to the high schools about, entrepreneurship and business, and, get to school, and I'll donate my time. Right.
A lot of these kids, there's so much pressure that the traditional world is putting on kids that if you don't go to college, you're a failure. That it's now normal and everyone should go to college. And I'm just not, and you're talking to somebody that went to college for far too long, 5 years instead of 4. So it's not for everybody. And as somebody who's went through it, were there some skill sets that I learned that probably helped me in this journey? Yeah, but a lot of it was things that you wouldn't think of: networking, relationship building, team building, being on a basketball team, being a captain of a basketball team, things, leadership, things like that. In the classroom, macro, micro economics, corporate finance that I flunked the first time. Here's the biggest one: marketing. I was a marketing minor. Do you know how much of that was relevant after I graduated?
Yeah.
None.
Wow.
None. But there's so much pressure on these kids that, hey, if you don't go to college, or if you don't see a clear path, and at the time, had I not gotten a scholarship, I don't know how we would have paid for it. People think that I came from a wealthy family. My family didn't get wealthy until I was in college, well into college, right? I didn't come from money. So this is why my dad sat me down and made me write letters to colleges and sent off a highlight tape and whatnot so I could get recruited and get a scholarship, because they didn't. I figured they're my parents. They would have taken their shirt off their back. They would have done whatever it took if I still wanted to go to college. They're not going to let down their kids, just like I wouldn't for mine. If they wanted a yacht, yeah, I can't afford one, but I try to figure it out. So don't let them down. That's how we are as parents, right? We don't want to let down our kids.
Nope.
But now I just feel like there's too much pressure on kids to go to college, when college is not the answer all the time. If you want to be an entrepreneur, you want to fast track to get to where I'm at, you sit down on freaking Google and you start watching YouTube video after YouTube video after YouTube video. In 2 years, you'll be making 4 times what these doctors are making that took 6 years to get their degree, or 8 years to get their degree, and don't have any debt. And in fact, if you want to have a little bit of debt by paying a mentor, that's a life hack that doesn't get talked about enough.
Nope.
Yeah.
And it's funny because, I don't know if you know this, but Elon Musk said this not too long ago. I don't remember what the timeline was. It's probably in the last couple of years, but he said that exact same. He said, you don't need to go to college. Sit down with Google and you can take any course you want and get it figured out. And, and to your own, how your parents raised you, how we do some things is how we do everything. So, you went to college, but you made the most of it. A lot of these kids are getting pushed into it and they don't want to be there. They don't want the subject matter. And they get there and they go, I don't want to do this. And so now the system is designed to totally fail them, right? Because now they've got all this student debt. They can't pay it back. What do you do from there? And so I think the amount of pressure, my son did the opposite. I homeschooled him. He got, when he graduated from homeschool, he goes, I don't know what I want to do, Dad. I'll get it figured out. I said, okay, yeah, I know you will. And sure enough, years later, he decided he wanted to go to college. Now, he built his first computer when he was 12 years old, literally built the whole thing, put all the hardware together, software, did it all. And so he decided he wanted to go to school when he was 25. Well, guess what? He got Bella grants. And as long as you maintain a good grade point average, You don't have to pay it back. So
Mm.
he's going to graduate. In fact, I'm trying to get him to write a book. He won't do it. Maybe he will someday, but he's going to graduate from App State University. And next semester, he'll have his associate's and his bachelor's degree in computer science.
Mm.
And he has zero debt, Michael, none, right? And he figured that out on his own because the curriculum that we gave him in his homeschool did the same thing. It wasn't somebody standing in front of the class going, do this, do that, none of that. The curriculum was, you want the answer? It's in the book. Go read the book and find it. So he became very resourceful. Same thing happened here. He figured it all out. So, we don't teach our kids how to learn today.
No, we don't.
No.
Back to a point that you made earlier, and I'll kind of leave it at this because I got to go pick Rowan up from school. Coming up with or becoming your own bank, right? If you had $100 million, you start your own bank. And I can't let the cat too far out of the bag because we're at the beginning phases of this and just had a call with my attorney. So there's a lot of details that got to get worked out. But I'll just give you the high level overview. We spent 9 hours masterminding yesterday.
Yeah.
And I'm the guy, the CEO that chases unicorns, right? And people make fun of that. And, somebody with ADHD and don't medicate and whatnot. Again, there's so much pressure that, there's something wrong with you. Instead, just harness that, what I would call ability instead of a disability.
Yeah.
And everybody knows that in this organization. I'm the unicorn chaser. So what unicorn did we come up with yesterday? Is if you get a HELOC, you get a HELOC directly from us. And it's a fund that we create. But if you get the HELOC from us, you're also the investor in that fund. And it ends up becoming, because you're the investor, you also get a dividend from the fund. It becomes a 0% loan.
Oh, okay. Thanks. Now I'm not going to sleep tonight.
Okay. Yeah.
Wow.
So is this something that's going to get rolled out in the next 3 to 6 months? No. And I'll be honest with you, the first roadblock that we know of is the FDIC commissioner right now. This administration has kind of put a commissioner in place that has put a halt on a lot of innovating and creating for banks. The previous commissioner was totally different. It was kind of like an open book. Hey, go create something, put it across my table and let's see what we can create and innovate. This one's the complete opposite. So that's the first roadblock. But we'll where there's a way, or there's a way. So there's a wall there. So either we got to jump over it or go around it, under it, or I'll just punch through it. Right. But how cool that logistically, this is something that can happen. It can be a win-win for the fund and for the homeowner. So you get to own the paper that you're actually borrowing from.
That is freaking brilliant.
Yeah.
Oh, you got to be kidding me.
So I'm really good at that. Like the unicorn stuff, I can go. Yeah. To me, that's the easy part. The hard part is actually executing. So that's why I don't have my $300 million yet. So,
well, and that's why you surround yourself. There's lots of people that can do that, right? So you find your executors. I mean, it's right. Tony teaches that at Business Mastery. Yeah, you're the visionary, man. Keep that vision alive. Keep it in front of you, and you can always find the people to manage it and the implementers that love the details, right? Yep. There's always those people out there. So you're surrounding yourself with good people, and that's another thing, man. Peer group is everything, and
Absolutely.
You've done a masterful job of creating an incredible peer group.
Thank you. Last thing is I want people to be able to get in touch with you for both of your services. So you got your Firewalk. So if you could just kind of tell people, because we got a lot of business owners in this group, how can they get in touch with you? This is a great team building exercise. I've done it for my team. It's totally different because, you want to take your team, you go somewhere and you mastermind, you sit down for meetings and stuff. This is something that's both impactful, but not boring, if that makes sense. I hate meetings. So this is something that as a team, you get team building exercises, but you break through barriers that you didn't even realize you had at the time, because who's sitting around thinking, sitting on the couch watching TV that, hey, I'm going to go walk on fire today, or walk on glass, or stick an arrow through my throat, or, it doesn't actually go through your throat, but you break it with your throat. Things of this thing. Most people don't think that way because they have limiting beliefs. So how can people get in touch with you on the Firewalk side? And then we also want to talk about how they get in touch with you on the Replace Your Mortgage side.
Gotcha. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Well, it comes down to that thing. You heard me say it. What doesn't challenge you doesn't change you. And so if you have an organization, you know, as a CEO or as a business owner, that's a very daunting task, man, because you're in charge of motivation, inspiration, and keeping everybody encouraged. And that can be really, really hard. And so that's where we come in. You know, we'll come in and we'll create one of the most spectacular events you can probably ever create. And so with that, you can find us at www.firewalkadventures.com. So again, that's firewalkadventures, all one word.com. With regard to the replace your mortgage and replace your university spot that I'm involved with now as well, I have a link, and it's www.daverym.com. It's
Dave, D-A-V-E.
D-A-V-E, R as in Robert, Y as in yellow, M as in mortgage.com. And that takes it to the Replace Your University website, where they can get all the information and start the process.
Cool. Well, Dave, I appreciate it. Thanks for
thanks, bro,
being here today.
My pleasure.
I wouldn't say I wasn't excited for all the other ones. I don't want to discredit them, but this was the one on the list that I was really excited about, because that one, I'm looking for you for nuggets too. Just like you're looking for other people. That was the nugget I wanted from you, is that energy, that vitality, and that passion that you still have today. That's something that I hope I have for the next 10 or 15 years. So thank you for that. Everybody take care and God bless.
Thank you, man.